All right, everyone, welcome to our weekly workshop. Thank you for being a part of this. We always have the chat open. If you guys do log in, be sure to mute yourselves so that we don't end up hearing all the crazy stuff in the background. And today we have Kevin. Kevin is the lead developer over at Space Interactive, and he's creating a brand new game called UnderSpace, which is a sci-fi shooter. We've posted it many times on Best of Unity because it just looks incredible. And so we brought him down here to talk to us about his indie dev journey, how he got started in game development and his process of getting started with Underspace and developing it, and just kind of go from there. So, Kevin, thank you for being a part of this.
It's my pleasure.
All
You said
right.
sci-fi, though. I wouldn't call it pretty light on the sci in
Okay.
terms of Underspace. Very, very heavy fantasy based.
Well, that's a great. So, Kevin, tell me, like, how did you get into Unity?
So I've actually gone through a lot of engines. I've done CryEngine, I've done Leadworks, if anyone's ever heard of that. I've done Blitz Basic, a tons of different ones. And after a while, for me, it was like, I want a game engine where I don't have to struggle. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to be the guy doing everything. I'm here to make a game. I'm not here to basically halfway program this engine. I used to do a lot of work in Leadworks, and eventually there was an issue where it could only load .wav files. I was like, can I like have some sort of MP3 wrapper or GG thing? And this is an engine you had to pay for. It was a premium engine. And they just said, you just write the audio wrapper yourself. It's like, I can, but that's what you should be enabling. So when I was in college, that was actually my first introduction to Unity. And I was working with it, and it's like, okay, this is really good for rapid prototyping and development. So eventually, when it came time to make Underspace, it's like I've experienced a lot of other engines, but this is the one where we could really make a game of large scale in a reasonable time frame.
Awesome. So, um, you started settling into Unity. Now, when you said how many years did you actually commit toward Unity before um you
About,
started going to?
if I'm thinking off the top of my head, about 3 years
Okay.
in Unity.
Okay. Really? So you haven't been? Hold on. Let me walk me through that timeline one more time. So you've been using.
So 3 years before starting Underspace in Unity, and
Okay.
then 5 years since then just working it.
I gotcha. So did you go to school for game development, or did you
for computer programming?
For computer programming? Okay.
Yeah, so
and then when you started getting into Unity and you started developing for that, were you at that time working for another company doing Unity development or programming? Like what was
so I have worked for Human Head as a programmer, Human Head Studios, if you're aware of them. They're now Roundhouse Studios.
Why does that sound so familiar?
They're the ones that did Rune and the original Prey, and they also did. I was a programmer, an Unreal programmer for the Quiet Man, if anyone's familiar with that game.
Okay.
And if you are, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry.
Okay. All right. So you were actually working for Roundhouse. Was this before they made their big epic games, or was this during it?
This was about a couple years ago. Okay. So 2017 or so. So this was during like the development of Quiet Man, Survived By, and just before the start of the development of Room 2.
Okay, I gotcha. And then what happened after that? Like, did you take a break out of it? Did you start doing freelance?
So I actually, my original, like, what my DNA is kind of made up of is modding. I did a lot of modding for Bethesda games and stuff. So I actually still am a contractor for them. I make do dungeon work and some request work for Bethesda Game Studios on games like Skyrim and stuff because I got my start in modding. My original claim to fame was, if you've ever seen that thing that replaces the dragons with Thomas the Tank Engine, right. That was kind of my original claim to fame, as it were.
Okay.
But I started doing contract work with them, and it paid well enough that I was able to use some of that excess money to actually start up my own studio. This studio has been established for a little bit. We were working on a previous game, which was this campy sci-fi, not space, but sci-fi RPG called NanoSteam, which is still in the works, but we wanted to do something that was a little bit smaller in scope first. to generate some initial capital so we could, make more games after this. That's what Underspace became. We were trying to cash in on the fact that there's really been no good successors to Freelancer
Hmm.
after all these years. So we wanted to go out and like truly make like the game that Freelancer 2 should have been, since a lot of people are still kind of expecting that from a lot of things.
Hmm.
So that's where Underspace came from. Like I said, I've been working on that for about 5 years, ever since I left Human Head. The contract work for Bethesda kind of funds it in a little bit, and then I use some of the excess funds to pay the contractors. And then we had a Kickstarter in 2019 that got funded, and that also helped.
Wow, that's incredible. There's so many things I want to pick apart because it's rich. Um, okay, so not many people could say that I do contract work for Bethesda, but that's not like my main thing. The main thing I want to do is build my own studio and build my own games. That's pretty
Yeah.
incredible. That's incredibly amazing. And you got that just by doing mods, and then they noticed you.
Yeah, I was. Everyone talks about the Thomas the Tank Engine one, but I had a long history of doing really like DLC expansion pack sized quest mods and stuff. But, adds 10 new dungeons, tons of new quest lines, new weapons, new mechanics. That was my main thing. And eventually they came in and it's like, okay, we're doing a lot of contract work with modders and stuff. We want you to be a part of that. So
Wow.
if any of you have played Skyrim, if you know the Forgotten Seasons DLC, that was my brainchild.
Gotcha. So, like, did you get noticed on some big streamers that played your mods a lot, like what Henry over at MXR or
Oh
whatnot,
yeah,
or
yeah. MXR has featured my stuff a lot. The Thomas the Tank Engine, obviously, that's been the claim to fame. I've gotten into legal trouble for that all the time, but the large mods were the mainstay. That was the bread and butter back when I did mods. I still kind of did one. I released some mods for the 10th anniversary of Skyrim, but my whole thing, if my name did indicate, my whole thing was everything had to be related to trains.
Gotcha. And it's incredible because the only reason why I would say Skyrim is relevant nowadays is because of the modding community. Like the game
Mm.
itself is really dated, but what the modders have been able to do with it to improve it over the years have basically transformed it into its own little ecosystem of it's I feel like it's almost like its own little what's that game, that Roblox or something like that, where you
Oh
have your
yeah.
base game, but then it completely transforms into basically anything you want.
No, yeah. I mean, it's the same case with like Minecraft and stuff. And Bethesda games have always had large scale modding communities that last forever. Morrowind still gets modded. I was a tester for the open source remake of that also has a multiplayer fork. And a lot of the concepts in their multiplayer fork of how do you handle such a large scale open world game as a multiplayer game are in Underspace's multiplayer.
Wow, that's incredible. And then, okay, so you're doing the modding, you're doing that for fun, you're making some money off of it, you're doing freelance, and then you're also working for other studios, you mentioned Roundhouse, you mentioned Human Head. Like, what were you doing there?
I was just a programmer on the Quiet Man, like I
Hmm.
said. So I was doing camera work. I, I didn't live to see the release of Quiet Man, so I don't know if
Hmm.
it still has like a combo system in it or something. But I was helping program that, so it was just programming work.
Okay.
And I'm very much more of a I don't really consider myself a programmer. I very much consider myself a designer. That's what I did growing up with mods. That's what basically a lot of my other work was as a contractor. So I've never really enjoyed just straight programming. I like to
Hmm.
have my fingers in the pie, as it were.
Gotcha. And so now you mentioned freelancer, and can you describe what freelancer is for the people who don't know what that is?
So, if you're familiar with Star Citizen, way, way, way back when, about 2003, the guy behind Star Citizen had similarly had a
Chris
bloated, out of
Roberts.
control, Chris Roberts, out of control game called Freelancer, that Microsoft was the publisher for, and eventually took away control and published it. And it was very much scaled back, a lot of the things they did, but it's still kind of considered like the gold standard for open world space sims and stuff. It's not scientifically accurate anyway. The scale is weird. A lot of the mechanics are more arcadey, but people still absolutely love the game. It still gets
Mhm.
modded. There's still servers for it, but it's not just dated in terms of like mechanics and graphics. It's dated in terms of how far you can actually push the engine in terms of mods. But it, like I said, so it's an open world space game. You've got a storyline and you've got, flavor text and lore and stuff. And it's you basically fly around, you do missions, you trade, you do a lot of exploration to try and build your character up to get new items, new equipment to explore deeper and deeper areas. So UnderSpace, as I tell people, it is not a freelancer clone in any way, and you absolutely should not download freelancer models ported to Unity to mod them into UnderSpace, which you can do, but you should not, if you understand me.
So you got you got freelancer, and then that was your inspiration, and you created UnderSpace. Now, was this something that you kind of toyed with and then you jumped right into it, or did you just say, all right, well, I'm going to carve out 20, 30, 40 hours a week to dedicate myself to building this?
I had played around with some initial ideas for it and stuff. Underspace is kind of a lot of different things mashed together. One of the things that's very inherent in it is it's based off a canceled Elder Scrolls Space thing I was working on. Not official, but I was like, I want more like fantasy style space games. Like we have pretty much the only two I can think of that actually exist are Spelljammer and Sunless Skies, and that's about it. There's a right world for taking space and just making it weird and fantastical, but it has the freelancer kind of overlay to it. So the galaxy is strange. There's massive superstructures. There's giant ancient space squids. There's space forests. Nothing obeys real science. This is inherently a magical world, but you are still basically a space pilot and a space fighter blowing these things up with space lasers. Because,
Gotcha.
like I said, that's the ultimate goal. It's an open world space RPG, but it's got that fantastical overlay similar to Spelljammer or Sunless Skies. When I tell people.
Okay. So is that the kind of like the overall explanation of what Underspace is, or can you go into more detail with this?
The pitch I always give is it is an open world Lovecraftian space fighter RPG. Whatever allows for faster than light travel also causes these horrific anomalous storms to blow across the galaxy at incredible speeds. And whatever star system they hit, they create anomalies, they spew forth monsters, and they generally create chaos. So you are a government commissioned storm chaser and monster hunter whose primary job it is to go into these storms and clear them out to make it safe for settlement and passage, which is the excuse we give you to go all over the galaxy, doing quests, going into space dungeons, fighting space monsters, and just generally having a fun time.
Oh wow, that's incredible. Now, this is always going to be. Is this like? Are you similar to Star Citizen, where you can eject out of your ship? Are we retaining the player inside the ship at all times?
This is one of the things I don't like in Star Citizen is they moved kind of away from the spaceship aspect of it. It's like I've seen like there's apparently like you have to go to the bathroom mechanics now and stuff. It's just like no, this is a space game. So you are primarily in a space fighter. That is the thing you're building up. That's almost your character in a way. But you can land and walk around on planets and stations and stuff. It's not meant to be like something where you actually get into gunfights and stuff, but it is like you can walk around and talk to merchants, and that's how you take quests or find out new lore bits. You can explore a bit, and this is a promise. It's halfway implemented, but it's not going to be until post-release. One of our stretch goals for a Kickstarter is you can leave your ship and do spacewalks and stuff. So there's EVA mechanics where you actually go out and you can do things like salvage ships or go inside old ancient wreck battleships to find loot there in a spacesuit. And there's going to be mechanics there as well. But primarily, it's a space game. You're in a space fighter. Your space fighter is going to get eaten by a ghost starship, most likely.
Yeah. Is there is there like an upgrade system for your ships to occur where you're continuously adjusting and buying new ships, or are you just upgrading your equipment or anything like that?
Oh yeah. So we have about, I'm trying to think, well over 50 flyable ships, and they all have different stats. Most things are kind of divided into tiers and stuff. Like a tier 3 light fighter will be better than a tier 1 light fighter, but a tier 3 heavy fighter isn't exactly better than a tier 3 light fighter. It's kind of like there's a mix of horizontal and vertical progression. But then, of course, we also have hundreds and hundreds of different equipment pieces. It's very much like an RPG where you're trying to find the best stats for your character or the best equipment for your character. So there's tons of customization. We have special equipment that can give you like special abilities and stuff. For example, you can equip like a projector that puts the sphere up around your ship so you can't no projectiles can come in, but you can fire out of it. And it's a big sphere, so in multiplayer and stuff, you could throw that up and all your friends can cower behind it as you lay into a boss.
Well, hold on. You just introduced multiplayer as well,
Oh
right?
yeah, it's got so we've got single player and multiplayer, both with their own campaigns. Think of it like kind of like a Grand Theft Auto 5, Grand Theft Auto Online dichotomy,
Mhm.
but way less hackers and way less microtransactions.
Right. That's kind
But
of
it's
nice.
it's the single player is much more story based, and the multiplayer campaign is more just an excuse to get you to go out and do space dungeons and space bosses.
Gotcha. And you'll be able to use the same equipment that you have in the single player in the
Correct.
multiplayer
There's
section.
some changes. For example, in single player, you have party members and squad mates and stuff. That's not a thing in multiplayer. In multiplayer, that's replaced with basically like a group and party management menu.
Okay. Now, you chose Unity for this particular project. Now, you've modded for Skyrim and used their engines. You've worked in Unreal. You've worked in a bunch of different. Why did you choose Unity?
Like I said before, Unity is very much the one where I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. It's where we could get the most results with the least amount of work possible.
Gotcha.
And I've been enough of a game developer to realize that I don't care about like reinventing the wheel. I don't care about these things where you have to go out of your way to write your own shader language or physics. And it's
Mhm.
like, I just want the documentation. I just want to make this ship fly and shoot things. I'm here to make the game. Everything else is secondary to that. And
Right.
Unity is basically the best one if you're just looking to straight up make a game.
Right.
Unreal is good too, but you got to understand, like I said, my primary experience with Unreal was the Quiet Man. So I've kind of got some trauma there. So I have nothing against Unreal. It's the same reason like somebody might not be a dog person.
Right. Like, well, and Unreal has its strengths. It's got
Oh yeah.
incredible graphics. If you want to make a third-person character game, it's basically built for that. But
Oh
then,
yeah. I mean, if you're familiar with the game Project Wingman, he's a colleague of mine. That was all. It's a beautiful looking game,
yeah.
and that was all basically one guy doing that,
Mhm.
except for I think maybe the soundtrack and some of the voice work.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in Unity, you and how many people are working on this project, and how long have you been dedicated to it? You said 5 years, right?
Around 5 years, like it's like 4.75 years at this point.
Mhm.
Like I said, it'll be 5 years in September. Primarily, I am chief programmer. Chief basically does everything except some of the animation and art for a lot of the organic assets. So we'll be eventually posting some of the screenshots of or videos of some of like the giant space squids and stuff, which are like these massive, star system size things with tons and tons of eyeballs that all are animated, and all of that is done via some of our contractors. So I do commission-based contract work. They get milestone payments and they deliver the assets. So a lot of the initial stuff there was done by asset creators, and they do also work in Unity. So they were familiar with a lot of the animation systems and stuff, recording that in.
Nice. Now, for multiplayer aspects, what system are you using for that?
I am using ML API, which is, I believe that's what Unity has now replaced their old networking system with.
Mhm.
Uh, Networking is hard. That's definitely one of the harder things to program in games.
Yeah.
You got to understand concepts like determinism and what's the minimum overhead, all this kind of stuff. So ML API kind of extends Unity's system, but it doesn't have a lot of the arbitrary, weird limitations. Like you can only have like 32 variables on a single like synced
Hmm.
character or some sort
Mhm.
of synced thing, and it's like that's not the case here. It's much more gives you much more control over like what has authority. So like one of the things we talked about is Morrowind's multiplayer open source fork. It's not quite client it's like not client server. It's like a weird peer-to-peer thing, basically. So if anyone's familiar with how Morrowind or any of the Elder Scrolls games work, is everything's divided into cells. So if you enter an interior, that's an interior cell. There are the exterior cells, which form a big grid, which forms a landscape. And so the way it works is basically like if a player enters this cell, they kind of become the authority of that cell. They're the one actually running the logic of things like the NPCs, the quest scripts, and all that. And when another player enters that cell, they basically are getting their data from the original authority player. But if that player leaves, it will find a new player to assign the authority to. So we're using a similar system here in UnderSpace. Like if you enter a zone where there's NPCs, if it's synchronized, for example, if it's just one person in a star system, it doesn't do much synchronization beyond some basic anti-cheat stuff.
Mhm.
If you enter that system, if two players are in that system, it'll do some stuff to determine, okay, who's the authority on this, who's going to be running the NPC logic, and it passes that. So it's a mix of peer-to-peer server stuff. It's a Frankenstein mess, but like I said, it's about getting it to work.
Mhm. Wow, that's incredible. Um, let's see. Wesley asked a question. Wesley, can you ask your question about the QA testing for multiplayer?
How do you do QA tests for multiplayer and networking? Uh, we've got a Discord that we run. It's got now 200 people right now, and about 10 of those or so are testers. So we do in the past, we've done a lot of multiplayer tests and stuff where we give out the game to these testers, and it's like, I'm running the server now, try and connect, let's see what goes wrong. And there's been some interesting glitches, to say the least.
Mhm. Wow.
Probably my favorite is, for whatever reason, it decided that one player was all players, so they all got merged together at this one giant amalgam that was just flying around, and whoever was the authority of that cell just basically could take everyone everywhere. It was very strange.
Wow. So I'm because I've never done like any type of real multiplayer networking. I'm assuming that this has been quite the experience versus just single player development.
Yeah, basically my advice to someone who wants to add multiplayer is, it's not hard,
Mhm.
but it is a lot of time, especially just in terms of testing. You're going to spend so much time debugging things. You're going to go like, why can't I connect to my server? And then suddenly you can connect to your server. It's like, nothing has changed. What the heck's going on? It's this is definitely going to be probably the only game we do multiplayer for, simply because it's kind of expected of a game at this point, this kind of game.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh,
Something to say. Sorry,
yeah,
now.
sure.
So when it comes to multiplayer, the reason why I put small packs is because whenever you're doing networking, you're using two different types of UTP and UDP.
Mhm.
So when you use UTP, that's where the issues come from for multiplayer. When you use UDP uses small packs and it's faster use.
Mhm.
Reason why I know this is because I'm also, I do what you do, freelancing, but for big corporations and companies worldwide. And when it comes to UTP, we're trying to transfer, not using UTP, we're using UDP for fast usage for example, small pack or big packets for, let's say, warehousing, because
Mhm.
company that I work for deals with warehousing and warehousing software. And everything else is fast paced. And user wants it done fast, and user wants it done, quick and easy, one step process. Everything else, it should be simple as of like multiplayer use as well. One of the reasons why I kind of joined Game Dev HQ, because I want to start learning more about that as well, especially making my own game, but slow process. Other than that, that's all I had to say, guys. Thanks for letting me talk about that.
Mhm. Thank you, Jonathan.
Well, thank you.
So going into this project, did you look at alternative sources of funding, such as a publisher?
We're actually still on the fence about publishers and stuff. A good friend of mine is behind Tiny Combat Arena, and he signed a deal with Microprose, who are surprisingly still around. I don't think they're
Mhm.
necessarily the same
Wow.
people, but they're still.
Yeah.
I know,
Okay.
right? It's like, yeah, it's the Roller Coaster Tycoon guys. So
Yeah.
they published his game, and his sales numbers have been through the roof and stuff. So it's a matter of, we've got some decent wish list numbers, but it's also like, if we signed on with a good publisher, how much more would that get us? So we're still looking at possible alternative sources of funding. Not so much for this game, but also mostly for future games and stuff, because we want to do stuff after UnderSpace. There's the aforementioned Nanos team. I want to do like Morrowind meets Derail Valley, if anyone's familiar with that train simulator. We've got ideas for the next few decades. So we definitely we want cash. This is UnderSpace originally started kind of as a blatant cash grab to catch on the fact that there's no real good successors to a lot of space sims out there.
Hmm.
So we're still looking for funding and stuff. The Kickstarter definitely helped a lot. That's a lot of some of the cooler assets like the giant space squids, or we've got like a mimic, but it's a cargo container.
Hmm.
We've
I
got a lot of stuff
gotcha.
there.
I
That's
gotcha.
yeah.
Okay, so you're still looking for that publisher who could help you as far as your time spent outside of development, because there's always the side of when you're developing your game, there's the actual sitting down and programming, but then there's everything else that's involved: building the
Oh yeah.
websites, marketing, advertising, self-promotion. Like, how much of that time is spent doing that, and uh, versus actually building your game?
A little bit. We aren't going ham on marketing right now because one of the main I've seen a few games do it and it really kind of screws them over. Is there's the concept of the call to action basically.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a lot of marketing during the Kickstarter. We got on the front page of Imager. We got a few hundred upvotes on Reddit because we were just posted on smaller like space sim subreddits. And the idea is basically, if you don't have that call to action, if you don't have the game almost ready to be released or ready to be pre-ordered or a Kickstarter ready to be backed, you can really, it doesn't work out. I've had friends who have gotten major attention on Reddit, but the game was 2 years away from release. And when it came time to release, not a lot of sales. So a major thing is like we're doing a little bit of marketing, mostly to build up that initial base. We've got a lot of fans eagerly excited for the game now. But when it's closer to release, when that date is much more locked in, that's more of the plan of when we plan to go ham on marketing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. And you said that you're planning on actually releasing this sometime this year, then?
That's the hope. We're as I say to people, the light at the end of the tunnel is finally there.
Okay,
It's
awesome.
still some of a ways off, but a lot of the game was literally just setting up the systems. Now that those systems are all there, actually making content can take a really short amount of time. So in this past week alone, I've pretty much gotten all 20 or so ambient bosses out in the world. Their first draft's done and ready to be played. All the hazards that you can find when storm chasing, that took about 3 days to do. You can knock about 2 quests out a day. We've only got about 20 quests left. It goes faster than you might think once you're actually at that stage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you expect this to have like maybe like a 10-hour, 20-hour, 30-hour gameplay experience? Like, what's your thought process here?
Several hundred hours.
Several hundred hours. Okay.
People in the demo, I've had testers in the demo spend over 100 hours just in the initial like 5-star system region that it gives you.
Really, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
it's a very large game. Like I said, I'm an Elder Scrolls Bethesda alumni, so my average game time is if it's shorter than 50 hours, it's not worth my time.
Gotcha. Oh, that's awesome. Is it planned on being more than just PC? Do you want to move it over to any other areas?
I was open to consoles, but kind of the nature of a lot of space games is there's so many keys and a lot of controls that it's built for PC. I'm not against consoles in any way. I have no loyalty to one anything, and I think that's stupid. But this game, it was designed with PC in mind. We have some joystick and controller support, but I'm gonna say for now it's gonna be PC only unless something changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I doubt something will change because ultimately I don't think it's very fun with a controller.
Right. I got you.
Yeah.
Now, is there something that we could show the people screen share wise that either with a playthrough or a playback of a particular gameplay footage or whatnot that you think would be really enticing for our everybody watching this?
Yeah, give me 1 second to set it up because otherwise I have to go. Maybe I could fight a boss, but this boss you have to actually chase him down. So let me set something up.
Sure, absolutely. And while you're doing this setup, I'm curious because now that you've had 8 years of working on Unity versus other engines, like what do you see as far as the demand for Unity developers out there and what they're building?
I mean, Unity is such a widely used engine that it's hard to really box it into, or any engine really, into one particular kind of genre or type of game. I mean, Hollow Knight was made in Unity. you can, but at the same time, it's like much smaller indie games have also been made in Unity. I've been recently playing a game called Dread Delusion, which is a very large open world game, and that's also made in Unity.
Mhm.
It's Unity is very much, and I think it's very much a user friendly engine in a lot of ways. That's kind of its main things. Like there's tons of documentation. If you want to do something, rapidly prototype an idea, or literally just make a game. Sorry, I've moved you guys over to the other screen just so you can I can get the game set up.
Oh, sure, sure.
If you wanna rapidly prototype something, if you want to make something, it is very much the kind of it is the engine for you. There's just not a lot of setup involved. There's so many file types of imports and exports. It's versatile. It's the thing. It's versatile and it's easy to use, which is at this point. I'm not that old, but 2 months ago I bent over and threw out my back, so I feel old. And at this point, it's like I don't have much of a desire to do any sort of like drudge work. I'm just here to make the game.
Right, right, right. It wasn't too long ago where I sneezed and my back cracked, and I'm like, oh my god, what just happened?
I know, right? That's like I'm 28 years old. This is not supposed to be happening to me.
Let's see. I also
Sure.
made you co-host, so if you want to share your screen, you are more than welcome to.
Yeah, so I've got the game set up. Let me just make it
Mhm.
so that we can actually hear something.
And I think on
Audio still being.
the share option, when you do the share screen at the very bottom, it says, do you want it to like optimize the video for playback, and do you want sound? I think you have to
Okay,
click those little tabs.
advanced sharing options. Here we go. Share screen. Let's do screen 1. Share system audio. I have no idea.
There we go. We see what you see. Oh, I don't hear you though. You're muted.
Lobby blue 11-1. Document ports are free. Please proceed.
You're still muted.
Well, the audio, there's not a lot, there's not like voice acting or anything, so let me
Okay.
share screen, not share the audio.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Okay, how's that?
Looks good.
All right, you can still hear me?
Yep, I can still hear you.
Perfect. All right. So right now oh wait, are these? Yeah, so right now I'm just basically, I'm in the starting area. This is Planet Valdric. So hold up, I'm gonna use some console commands, fill map. So there's different regions and every region has a capital, which is usually indicated by a different icon. So we've got some storms going on right now. If you look at the map, so these are anything where there's red, that's where a storm is. And based on the level of the storm, right? I've got a light storm coming in, maybe a low chance of some thunder. That will determine the kind of like the level of hazard you'll find, but it also has some other effects in terms of what it does to the world. So stormed areas, the prices on goods and equipment get raised up. So if you're a trader, if you want to play as a trader and you see a stormed area, you know you can sell stuff there for much higher, but it'll also cost you much more to buy. It'll actually level up the enemies around you, and it'll spawn stronger enemies and stuff and stronger pirates, because there is levels in this game, of course. And then of course there's also like, there's different like, we have jump holes between systems and stuff. So unlike jump gates, jump holes are very unstable. They have a chance of collapsing and sending you into the abyss, and you do not want to go into the abyss. So the more stronger storms are, the stronger chance you have of getting that jump hole collapsing. But there's also these jump holes can get you to some really unique locations or some really far off locations. So you can use them to skip across half the galaxy in one go. So that's kind of the storm mechanics and stuff. And of course, the storms swell and surge and move across the galaxy. All throughout it, you can meet other star chasers. That's the storm chasers. You can enroll with different storm chasing chapters that have their own goals and motivations. We have a whole faction system. There's a lot to this game. So anyway, right now I am in a capital system. Capital systems are usually pretty safe. They have no chance of actually spawning storms, but storms can still grow to them. So right now I'm just kind of flying around the home world, and there's ships doing stuff. There's this guy doing this. I can try and buzz him. If I get in front of him too much, he'll honk at me and get mad. So I'm not gonna mess with him. So this is, each region of the game has different flavors and stuff going on. For this particular thing, this is the Valdric expanse. So we have a lot of we have these. It's almost kind of got like a European theme. So I've got these ancient-looking space lampposts. There's a big asteroid structure. There's lots of statues. There's lots of fancy stuff going on here. So I'm actually to a quest system and do this one. So this is when you're going along in areas and stuff, you can stumble upon like ancient jump gates and stuff, and they'll spit you out and say some another dimension and stuff. So in this particular one, this particular quest is you go through a hyperspace gate that you found, and you just end up in this weird area. You can see this grid that's moving, it shifts weird. You have no idea where you are, and you get a distress signal from a freighter that says it's been trapped here, and they need some help to escape, because this system, weird as it is actually some sort of ancient established superhighway, and it's got stuff that defends it. So I'm going to get some coordinates, and this starts a quest that will give me some coordinates. And this is a fun one. This is one of my favorite quests in the starting areas. So this actually is playable in the demo. We have a demo, by the way. So once I actually rescue this lady, because I blew up her ship to get her escape pod out, it was jammed. It's going to summon in a bunch of really, really high level enemies that I have to run away from. And I've got a bunch of unique attacks and huge beam cannons that fire at you. So you have to kind of learn to dodge all that while you try to escape back into real space, as it were. So this is we have about 60 or so quests. They vary a lot in terms of mechanics and stuff. I don't like fetch quests. What I prefer is, like, if I do a quest, I want it to involve something mechanically that I'm not doing in regular play. So like I said, in this one, it's very much an escape the dungeon kind of quest, where you're trying to outrun these high level enemies, which at usually the level you encounter them, you're not able to defeat. You can actually kill them though. You'll get some special dialogue and a bit of rewards if you actually manage to defeat them. So I'm just cruising out here. There's some downtime and stuff. This game is not to the scale of normal space games and stuff. You're not going to be spending 30 minutes trafficking to one area, but there's still some downtime, and there's still ways you can like manage your systems and stuff. So I'm just going to run up to her ship. It tells me it's jammed. I ask her if it's safe or legal, and now I can shoot her ship and tractor that in. But once I do that, suddenly we have some enemies that warp in. And these are, I am level 1, these are level 50, and their guns, let me see if I can get hit. They're a little bit inaccurate because this is meant to be kind of a low level quest. But if they hit me, I should take some serious damage. Yeah, okay, so like a third of my health is gone in a single shot. So I'm gonna run away from them, serpentine, and try and get away. But as I'm approaching the gate to get out of this, there's going to be some higher level bosses that start to spawn and try and take me down. So like I said, this is very much an RPG. It's you're going places, you're doing quests, you have all your equipment and stuff, getting stuff. We have a bit of crafting. So with crafting and stuff, you'll find like broken weapons or there's a boss. Different kinds of items that you can take other kinds of common items and combine with. So let's see, this guy has a big beam cannon. Whoa! Does a lot of damage, and it's pretty accurate. So I'm going to see if I can take him on. But once I get close enough, of course, the beam's a little less dangerous. Obviously, combat is pretty frenetic. So his beam can't turn once he's far away. So I've got an advantage there. But you've got kind of a Dark Souls style dodge thing. But it takes a lot of your thrust energy. Better thrusters make you take less dodge energy, but it's very useful for avoiding instantaneous things. So I'm just definitely not going to try and bother with this guy because he's still pretty powerful. And he's still targeting me. There needs to be some tweaks on his turn rate, though.
It seems like
I'm going to head back.
The Zoom channel is still like catching up like 5 seconds, 10, 20 seconds later of what you're mentioning on the gameplay. But yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he's really hammering me, but luckily a little bit stronger than I thought. Let me repair that. Nope. All right, almost there. Oh, this is gonna be close. All right, now we get to the jump gate, and we gotta dock in time. Oh, I think I need to adjust some of his turn rates because he's definitely hammering me more than I thought he would. But we can get through this ancient jump gate just in time. I made it back to real space. So the way systems work is they're separated by jump gates, jump holes, of course.
Mhm.
You can get sucked into black holes and end up in strange spaces you're never meant to be. So we're back in real space, and we've got some space jellyfish over here. One of the things we like to do is that basically every path in the game is viable. If you want to be a pirate, that's a way you can make money. If you want to be a trader, that's a great way to make money. Smuggler. If you want to be an exploration kind of guy, like a scout or a trailblazer, out in space, there's tons and tons of different hidden objects and points of interest and stuff, and you can scan those, and that scanning that gives you money.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you can only, so there's tons of places to, it gives you money, it gives you rewards, and of course it gives you tons of new flavor text and information. So
Mhm.
like I said, I've gotten back into real space. I'm still in the demo area. There's space jellyfish. Hello. So I've basically completed this quest. If I took her back to the shipyard she wants to go to, I will unlock her as a party member, and
Mhm.
I can call her in to help me in battle and stuff, and she'll give me some extra bonuses. Like in this case, she'll augment my long range scanners. They won't take as much energy as they normally do.
Gotcha.
So let me see what is working for. Let's try and find a boss.
That's a beautiful looking a warp gate transition too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So right now we are in the Bastic system, short for bombastic, because this system is notable in that everything in it explodes. It's incredibly volatile. You go off the beaten path and you're going to find yourself basically in a minefield or a volatile gas field. And it currently has a storm in it right now. It looks like it's a category 3 storm, so that's pretty high level. So every storm, when you enter a system that has a storm, has a rift. That's kind of the central power source of the storm.
Mhm.
So you have to approach that rift, and it will spawn a boss or some sort of hazard. You have to overcome that and destroy the rift yourself, and that will give you kind of this premium currency that lets you buy high-level equipment. So I'm not going to bother with that because I don't want to. So I'm just going to use dev console to blow that up. What I'm actually looking for is, there we go. So we see some sort of, when you use your long range scanner, it will highlight nearby objects as these different shaped pulses and different colored pulses. And there's this weird orange one that isn't making much sense to me. So a player will be flying along here and they see that pulse and they go to investigate it. But as they get closer, let me just see. I'm going to turn on God mode because I'm level 1 and this is a level like 40 boss. And it will destroy me, unlike this one. This is not meant to be just to scare you. This is meant to annihilate you. Let's see.
I feel like I'm gonna go meet Cthulhu pretty soon.
Here we go. This is Mighty Hydrix. So this was an experimental, what's called an induction cruiser. They can actually rip open these, as you can see, these traveling wormholes and make them target people. But of course, like most things in this game, it was brought to life by a storm, and now it's basically an evil ghost ship that still has access to its extraordinarily fast killer wormholes. So you have to manage fighting this machine while you're dodging its nearby wormholes. So sometimes they'll just spin around and idle, but other times they will target you up. And if they manage to get their claws on you, they can do some serious damage. So this boss is still a little bit of a work in progress. Like I said, the first draft is there to make him playable. What I was kind of want to do is add some lights to those wormholes so you can tell when they're getting close enough to you. So at a high level and stuff, you'll be dodging these things constantly. You'll be trying to avoid them. And all the while, this ship will have some pretty powerful cannons and missile turrets and stuff that it'll be firing you at. And you can't just, unfortunately, just like hide inside its cargo bays or something, because these two wormholes are tunneling around, and if they hit you, they'll do some, like I said, some serious damage. And they're coming after me again. So you have to kind of manage keeping track of those wormholes on me. Luckily, I'm invincible right now, so I don't have to worry about that. So I have to manage that while also at the same time doing damage to the ship. So in multiplayer and stuff, the wormholes will spread out and target different players, so players can kind of divide and conquer against it, but it'll still have some serious firepower against it. But if I manage to defeat it, it blows up, it screams and shakes the camera as it annihilates itself. little bit of shake there. It's still a work in progress. And I'll get a rect hyperspatial microtubing. So this is a bit of microtubing. This is a thing that will augment my repair abilities. It will make my the ability to repair my hull much more powerful, and I can carry a lot more hull repair items. But right now it's wrecked. So when I am out and about exploring or doing different stuff, I will, if I'm fighting enemies or looting wrecks, I will find these repair items and these special items that can let me repair this higher level equipment, so I don't have to necessarily buy it from a source. So that was one boss. Like I said, he's still a work in progress. Bosses are the thing I'm actually working on right now.
That's incredible,
So
man. That was intense.
a lot of first draft stuff. Oh yeah, so that's a fun thing. So what we've got nearby is, it looks like we've got a jump hole. When I'm out and about exploring, if I cast it, so we see those green pulses indicate it's some sort of travel thing, but we don't necessarily know what it is. So I can go up to this jump hole and take it. And it looks like this will take me to Marin Flow, which is a lot of systems have unique stuff in them. In this case, Marin Flow's whole gimmick is that it experiences rapid temperature fluctuations, and it's an ice nebula. So as you're flying along, these giant ice crystals will suddenly just explode in your face and suddenly rapidly form and melt. So we've got, every single system has something to do. So I'm actually not going to take that. I'm actually going to show off, let's show off a dungeon system. So when you're exploring dungeons or just exploring space and stuff, you'll often come across ancient gateways and stuff that are locked in certain ways. And you can go through quests and stuff and explore space some more, and you'll find ways to unlock these gates. And they'll often take you to, hold on, just gonna clear this quest. They will take you to dungeon systems. So in this case, this was some sort of race of, we're not quite sure what they are, but for whatever reason, they were really good at growing space trees. And deep in the center of their main grove, as it were, you'll find a certain strange thing. So as I'm approaching it, there's this weird collection of, looks kind of like a swarm. And as you get closer and closer, suddenly that swarm comes to life. And this is the Harvest Queen. So that's a whole collection of basically nanites that are designed to harvest and collect things. And they do not like me. If they get in my face, they will start just eating my ship alive, and they're protected by these bionic structures. So this is another boss fight. In this case, you have to outrun the swarm while doing damage to these structures to try and basically take away its shield generator. And once that's there, you can actually finally damage this ship. I am not equipped to actually damage these things in any way, and I am also running like crazy from this swarm, which is a little bit unoptimized right now. I think it's sharing the screen.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is.
Yeah, kind of lagging. The performance here is usually pretty a little bit better. I'm gonna errors here. Like I said, still a work in progress. So I'm gonna move away from this guy to another system. There we go. So here we are in another dungeon. So like I said, we have a ton of content, ton of space dungeons. And as we get further and further out into like the weird parts of space, you encounter some really strange things. So in this case, whoop. So we've got this whole ancient space dungeon. This is another one, like I said, you can unlock. We call them vignettes. They're not quite quests, but they're more like points of interest that have their own mechanics going on. So this whole thing has like some mysterious areas, like it's some sort of ancient super complex, and as we enter it, there's this will have another boss and a small quest associated with it. So we've just got, like I said, a ton of content, tons and tons of different things to experience. It's very much, like I said, consider this kind of in its own way, almost like a Bethesda RPG in some ways. It's not Starfield. There's definitely a little bit less grounded than that. But it's going to be that similar gameplay loop of going out into the unknown, finding areas, finding quests, finding things to do, and using that to build up your character and be able to go out into more and more difficult areas to experience greater and greater visual sights and challenges. So let me stop sharing for a moment.
That's incredible, man. That was awesome.
Yeah. So we've got a huge emphasis on bosses, huge emphasis on exploration. It is, if you're into space games, this is going to be the content heavy game you've been waiting for.
That's awesome. That looks incredible. That looks like a lot of fun. That's something you can get lost in for weeks at a time and just enjoy yourself. That's incredible. Um, Wesley asked, with so many game mechanics, man, what does your design process look like?
Could you like clarify that? Is like how do I organize things? How do I
Mm-hmm.
implement things?
Yeah, like do you have just like this game design document that this big, and is it all just event driven at this point? Because there's no way you can manage to make sure
Yeah.
that it doesn't do any weird component grabs or anything like
Yeah,
that.
so I don't have a game design document. I basically have this huge folder that has different, it's not one document. It's like, here's the sheet of all the bosses. Here's the entire folder that has all the quests and their mechanics and the actual like dialogue scripts behind them. So that's how I kind of organize things, is just document, document, document. I very much am a planner guy. I like to outline everything. I like to say, this is going to have this is going to have that. And from there, I definitely, I go ahead and implement them. But in terms of how a lot of this is implemented, I wrote my own scripting system for this. Like I said, Elder Scrolls alumni. So Elder Scrolls has Papyrus, which is its own scripting system. It's versatile, but it's also kind of finicky. It's like if you want to place a guy, make a guy sit down in a chair, you can't do that. You have to like disable him and then kill him and resurrect him and then move the chair and move him. And then finally he can be placed down in the chair. So this is a little bit more robust, but it's a lot more simplistic.
So you're
So a
able
lot
to
of
actually add in a lot of designs pretty quickly, is that right?
exactly.
Okay.
So for example, that Harvest Queen boss, as it were, it's basically there's several elements to that. The first thing is that the boss is very rudimentary and it just flies towards you. That's it. It flies towards you. And it's got some turn rate variables to make it turn less if it's closer to you. But inside that that swarm of nanites is a trigger zone, which is called a damaging field, and that's just literally if you're inside it, you take damage. Pretty simple. So the second thing is that we have death execution trackers, which are basically, I can give them a list of any sort of destroyable celestial body, be it a ship, a bionic structure, a planet. And basically what it says is that if those are dead, it will execute some very basic script, which in this case, what it does is it takes that Harvest Queen boss and says, okay, it is now able to take damage. So it basically, and I actually use those death execution trackers in a lot of things because they can also be scripted to not have anything tracked. So as they enable, they execute code.
Hmm.
So for example, in one quest, I might have something where it jumps in a battleship after you rob a space train. And so what that is literally when you talk to the guy who says, uh-oh, battleship incoming, that dialogue box basically says, it sets a flag that says that these death execution trackers can now start tracking. And so it will enable the battleship, it will enable a thing that moves the battleship, and then it will also enable like the battleship sounds and stuff. So there's, like I said, everything is basically just flags and enabling things to do these complicated script things. And that's how it's set up. It's very robust. It's very hard for it to actually malfunction. It still takes a lot of testing, but at the same time, it's basically everything is this kind of insane level of just enabling and disabling objects to execute code functions.
Does that usually, like, you're the one going in there making those changes, or do you have a team that's familiar enough with the system to go in and be
It's
like,
just
hey, I
me.
want to try this thing?
It is just me making all these changes. So all the quests being scripted, all these bosses being scripted so far.
Okay.
The team is for art assets. So they developed some
Oh,
of those
okay.
art assets for like the bionic structures and stuff. But as far as it goes, I'm the one who has to script everything, unfortunately.
Wow.
That's really cool though, because like I said, it's a lot to kind of go through, and I'm always curious. Like when I see Eve Online or something like that, I'm like, how does someone go in and like get all those mechanics to come in and kind of test around? And yeah, I think that kind of
Usually when you're talking about open world games and stuff, they're going to have some sort of scripting system or some sort of really basic building blocks. It's almost like code Legos in a way. And it's like you can give them a million different combinations to do whatever you want. And I still have to extend the scripting system from time to time. For example, I recently had something that could like actually add new locations to your map because I wanted something where you approach like this side of a battle and your character's like, okay, I can scan some of the energies here and relate it back to some sort of nearby jump hole or something. And that didn't have a script command, so I had to program in that script command. But once the script command is actually in there, it's fairly easy to use. Because one of the main goals with this is I wanted something that modders could really take advantage of, but it's like I can't really Unity, a lot of systems are not particularly modder friendly, particularly when it comes to adding new scripts or code.
Mhm.
That's kind of the scripting solution, is that middleman that allows you to just implement new objects that have all these variables, and you can create script from that.
Do you ever plan on maybe having an option in this game to have modders come in and
You
make
already have.
changes? Oh, they have? Okay, that's really
We
cool.
have native integrated modding. You have a load order that can actually detect conflicts between mods and stuff. Like I
Yeah.
said, I started off as a modder. A lot of things, I actually did freelancer mods back in the day. So a lot of things here, for example, like the abyss that happens if the jump holes collapse, that's actually from a lot of the mods I did for freelancer.
That's really cool.
So yeah, I'm down for modding. It is on release. There will be some, you can mod in ships, weapons, and a few other things. And as the game updates, the idea is to implement more and more support for different modding things. So eventually players will be able to create their own whole star systems and quest lines and such.
That's cool. Yeah, I know a guy that played with some Bethesda games that was trying to make like a Marvel mod where he's trying to integrate all the like Avengers and everything in. I was like, that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
so cool when they can kind of extend what's already there. Because it's all about like adding in your own flair, adding some story to it. So it's always kind of cool to see that kind of option in there.
Oh yeah,
I know it's hard to make, but yeah.
yeah, that's a lot of people are kind of like, oh, Bethesda should get a new engine. It's like if they switch to Unreal, all that mod support dies and stuff. That
Right.
making it a big thing if you want to do mod support is making things as data driven as possible. And it's something we use in UnderSpace, for example, less for modularity. That's certainly a thing we take into consideration, but it's also mostly for saving memory and disk space. For example, every ship in game is not actually like its own prefab. It is actually a base record that's constructed from an archetype. So for example, there might be two different freighters that are mostly identical in terms of what they look like, but they have wildly different stats. So the record will say, you both pull from this common freighter archetype, which is the model, the effects, the explosions, the engines, even the cockpit, but you have wildly different stats. And at runtime, I will instantiate that archetype and then I will modify it. And you do that for equipment. We do that from some star systems. We do that for a whole bunch of stuff in a way that can basically construct things from data at runtime.
That's incredible. Great work. Well, we are at the hour mark. So thank you again, Kevin, for being a part of this. Are there any last words you'd like to give about Underspace before we call it a Friday?
Like I said, this is a game. If you are into space games, check it out. If you're into fantasy games, check it out. If you like RPGs, check it out. If you want to have capitalist space lobsters or play as a capitalist space lobster, check it out because we have capitalist space lobsters you can play as.
Perfect.
It is massive in scope. It is massive in content. It is like I said, it's got something you'll enjoy, I guarantee it. And we do have a demo out. I'm pretty sure if you just Google UnderSpace, we have a download on itch.io that's still there. And that has the first star system, the first part of the main quest, and a bunch of different little things you can try out.
Awesome. Well, definitely everybody get it when you get a chance. If you want to dive into this, dive into it. It looks incredible. It's certainly a game I've been interested in playing for quite some time because there has been a lack of that. And yes, thank you again, Kevin, for hopping on.
That game looked amazing. Something that I would actually want to hop on soon.
Yeah, very good.
A lot of times I was like, I should have hired a second programmer.
Well, thank you again, Kevin, for being a part of this. We appreciate that, and thank you everybody else for hanging out with us today and watching this. And yes, thank you again.
My pleasure.